Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Fantasy Football Consistency Show. We're here every week, and I hope you are too. And we thank you and appreciate you for watching. As always, I'm Bob Lung for Big Guy Fantasy Sports. And that gentleman beside me is the one, the only Mr. Ron Rigney, coming to you live from Florida, where I'm coming to you live from Canton. Those are not real trees behind me. It is a background. But anyway, it's a typical crappy day here in Canton. It's 44 degrees, raining all day, but Florida, I assume it's a little bit better, right, Ron?
It is. Yeah, I was looking just a little bit ago. It's starting to get that, that nice when you get up in the morning, 65, 70 when you're leaving for work. It's beautiful out. But, we got Thanksgiving coming up. We got, next week is the last week before I have a week off from school. And of course, what better way to celebrate that than let's have another hurricane or tropical storm? Why not? So
What? No,
got
really?
got something brewing down there in
No.
the Caribbean, and it looks like it's taking a little turn. That's a little early, but it could affect the weather a little bit. We'll see what happens. I don't know, but yeah, kind of an unprecedented late November hurricane
Can't
slash
blame
tropical
me. I
storm. So
wasn't
we'll
down
see
there.
what. Well, yeah, we'll see what comes from that. Maybe I need to run out and buy up all the toilet paper and bread tomorrow. I don't know, but this ain't our first rodeo, so we'll deal with it and we'll move on. But yeah,
Uh,
week 11 already, and into that playoff stretch, man. So let's get you some consistency off that waiver wire or
yeah.
off those benches from those trades. Those trade deadlines are still out there as well.
Yeah. So trade deadlines, we were talking a little bit about that before we got started here tonight. This is the time. I was talking with my middle daughter, Mariah. She's like 5-4 or 5-5. I think she's 5-5. And I'm like, well, I said, how far are you out of? And again, she's got a lot to learn, and I try to help and educate her. And I said, well, how far are you out of the playoffs? And she goes, I don't know. And I go, what do you mean you don't know? I go, well, I said, if the top six make it, then where are you at versus the sixth place? And she goes, I am in sixth place. I said, okay, then right now you're good, but 5-5 is not going to cut it. So you got to start winning. So, I said, we need to start working on your team and helping you out. And she asked me about Kyle Pitts because she said, well, I don't think he's been doing much. And I'm like, honey, he's had 5 clutch games out of the last 6 weeks. And she goes, yeah, but he's only scoring me like 10 points a week. I go, exactly. It's exactly what
She,
you
she,
want.
she,
There are
she
people who
must
will
not have
kill
seen
for
the
him.
she must not have seen the tight end portion of the show literally every week for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to make sure I send her the link to the show and go, will you watch this show and realize how bad tight ends are? Like a clutch game is like 8.9. So yeah, if they get 10 points a week, they're gods at this point. They literally should have a statue in your hallway for him at this point if he's getting the way he's been playing. So yes, he's doing fine. But anyway, we are here every week, of course, telling you who the top players are from a consistency standpoint. We will start out, as always, with the quarterback position and heading towards this back-to-back MVP season. Lamar Jackson, 10 for 10. He's first in total points. He is now 46 points ahead of second place, which is still Baker Mayfield, who is 8 out of 10. Didn't first week he didn't earn a clutch game since week 3. So, but still 80% of the year, still having a good year. Jalen Hurts, 7 out of 9, 78%. Joe Burrow, 70%, putting up a couple back-to-back solid games. Josh Allen, 70%, and Jaden Daniels, 70%. Big game tonight. Probably by the time you see this, it either be tomorrow and you miss it, miss her. But good game tonight. Looking forward to maybe trying to catch some of that. Philadelphia, Washington fighting out for NFC East, and we'll see how Jaden Daniels goes in a pressure situation. Struggled a little bit last week, not terrible, but struggled from the perspective of playing against Pittsburgh. Always a tough one. Philadelphia's got a solid defense, not as good as Pittsburgh, but still solid. So we'll see how that all plays out tonight. Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, 67%. Russell Wilson, 67%. 2 out of 3 since he's got the starting job back. Not looking too bad. Just good enough, and that's what we're looking for. So, Ron, after that, we'd hit 60% or less. Talk about some of the players that you see up there or maybe not up there. And also kind of tell us about the guy you're looking at this week moving forward.
Well, one guy that jumps out that's down there a little bit further that kind of surprises me is Trevor Lawrence. He's been dinged up a little bit, but again, he's had some issues with Christian Kirk being out, Evan Ingram out part of the year. It's a guy that goes against some defenses too that he should be tearing up, and he's had a couple of clutch games in there, but for the most part, kind of disappointing. At the top there, myself, I'm looking at. Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow, just because I have a dynasty team where it's a two quarterback and those are my two quarterbacks. Pulled a few trades to make that happen, so that's working out pretty well in that regard. And Russell Wilson, you mentioned him too. It's kind of cool to see that resurgence. Say what you want about Russell Wilson, but the dude has been consistent over the years in Seattle, and then kind of disappeared, and it's kind of got back on the radar there in Pittsburgh. So it's kind of cool to see. The guy I'm going to go with though. We're going to talk about tight ends. You talked about tight end. George Kittle's kind of been at the top there. And the guy that you can kind of thank for that is Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's sitting here with 3 straight clutch games, 56% consistent, and a couple of nice outings the last couple of times out, including that game against Tampa, 353 and 2 scores. He's really been there with some key weeks for you. He had that one where he had the 3 picks and the no touchdowns and the 212 yards, but despite that, been pretty solid at the quarterback spot, and you pretty much know what you're getting with him. I hate to compare him to a guy like Tom Brady, because Tom Brady is just light years above everybody else, but he kind of reminds you of Tom Brady. He's not that ultra great athlete, but just understands defense as well, can read them, can call the right play, has nice weapons around him, and just gets the job done and is consistent and accurate. And that's what you want. You don't want those turnovers. You haven't gotten them for a couple of weeks from him. But again, very affordable in drafts. You probably got him fairly late. I have him in Scott Fishbowl.
Mm-hmm.
He's my second QB. I got him, that the quarterbacks in Scott Fishbowl go early and often. And I felt pretty good about getting him a little bit later and pairing him with CJ Stroud, and that's not been too bad. So again, if you got that number one consistent tight end, George Kittle, you got to thank Mr. Brock Purdy for that.
Absolutely. And like you said, he's 8th in total points. So, I think a lot of people, I had him ranked in my top 12, for the early season rankings. And I think that's, he's a little bit down. Like last year, he was a lot higher. I think he was in the 70% range. He's only at 56, but like you said, 4 straight clutch games after a slow start, but so many injuries, Debo and Ayuk and, McCaffrey goes down. This guy's been dealing with a lot of weapons around him coming and going, and that's really been a struggle for him. So he's back, he's moving, McCaffrey's back, everybody's back. Ayuk's out for the year, we know that, but Juwan Jennings has stepped up. It's been solid.
Ricky Pearsall has been good the last couple of weeks too, out of nowhere.
Yeah. So I'm going to go a lot further down, and I'm going to go for a guy that's put up 3 straight clutch games. Sadly, it's been his first 3 clutch games. And no, this is not a rookie. This is Justin Herbert. If you remember, Justin Herbert went through the first 4 weeks and didn't have passing yards in any one game higher than 179. That's how bad he was. Now, granted, it was all about run, Dobbins and Edwards, and, run. And they went 2-2. Bye week happens, and after week 6, he only had 237, but at least he was over 200. But last 3 weeks, not counting week 10, because they did win that game due to running, a combination of Edwards and Dobbins. But Herbert did have a rushing touchdown, so he could put up 3 straight clutch games, 282, 279, and 2 touchdowns and passing in the games in week 8, week 9 against New Orleans and Cleveland. He's actually been running the ball a little bit. 4 for 49 against New Orleans, 9 rushes for 32 yards and a rushing touchdown against Tennessee last week. So he's kind of bringing it back up. Quentin Johnson's getting involved. We've seen the tight ends be a little bit more involved. So he's kind of picking it back up. So again, if you're in a deeper league and maybe you got to buy this week and you've got to replace your quarterback, remember next week, week 12 and week 14 are the killer bye weeks. So might be a good time to look, see how everything looks out there for you. If you don't have a decent backup, it may be good to take a look at Edwards, Justin Herbert, and see that in week 12, he's playing against Baltimore, which is one of the worst defenses against the pass. And then in week 14 at Kansas City. Now, Kansas City's been pretty tough defense, but they're going to score points. So could be a shootout, AFC West. Uh, Always a different game when those kind of games happen, teams happen. So definitely take a look at that. So also wanted to give a shout out to Daniel Jones for all you haters. Just want to let you know, folks, he has a higher consistency percentage. Granted, it sucks at 40%, but he is ahead of Tua, Patrick Mahomes, and Jared Goff. Just saying. So, for all you haters out there, give the man a little bit of slack because he's not as bad as those guys. And guess where you drafted those guys? Not where you drafted Daniel Jones, if you drafted him at all. So, give a little love for Daniel. We're going to move to the quarterback, running back position. Just like the quarterback position, it's dominated by a Baltimore Raven. This gentleman's name, of course, is Derrick Henry, who is now about 20. Let's see. Oh, no, he's not that far ahead of Kamara. But 10 for 10, consistency. Bijan Robinson, third in total points, 10 for 10. Kyron Williams, 9 for 9, sixth in total points. Jahmyr Gibbs, sixth in total points, or seventh in total points, 9 for 9. Then we got some guys who have some 100% but haven't played as many games. Kareem Hunt, 100%. Pacheco, of course, was 2 for 2. And good. Hey, this guy named McCaffrey's back. Look at him. He's got a clutch game. He's 100%. Alvin Kamara, second in total points, 90%. David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, 89%. Joe Mixon, 86. Kenneth Walker, 86. Jonathan Taylor, 86. And Brian Robinson at 86. And he's back healthy tonight. Over 80%. Chuba Hubbard, James Conner. Ron, a lot of good players. A lot of the guys we probably drafted near the top. I mean, I don't think any of us looked at Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, and Joe Mixon and went, these guys are going to be close to 90% consistent, because where we drafted them in rounds, maybe 3, 4, 5-ish, it wasn't a lot of love for these guys, and for good reason. They're all changing teams. They're all we're thinking they're kind of riding that last ride off into the sunset, but they've all been holding their own very well when they can stay healthy. I mean, certainly they've had their nicks and cuts and bruises here. They've missed a few partial games and here and there, but still been very productive. I've got them in actually a number of dynasty leagues that people didn't want. Like, I traded for Joe Mixon. I traded for Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones. People were done with them. And I'm like, all right, here's a second or third round pick in 2025. Because F those picks. We don't need them.
That's what we live by.
Exactly. So Rod, take a look, take it from there.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you got to know when to draft those guys. Again, especially in dynasty leagues, like you were saying. I used to talk about this a lot with baseball dynasties. You want to always get those shiny new toys and those top prospects and those high draft picks, but at the same time, the goal is to win. And if you don't have that nice mix of those shiny new toys and those guys that kind of get cast to the side that people are kind of done with, you're not going to win. And I don't think anybody would have thought Joe Mixon was getting the volume that he was going to get. Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs. I don't think a lot of those guys were really, like you said, kind of at the forefront, just because I don't think people thought they were going to get the volume. But here we are, and those guys are carrying your team. Alvin Kamara has been awesome on an offense that has not been great. He's still, up there in total points, up there in consistency. But again, I'm going to go full on homer here. I'm going to go talk about my guy, Jonathan Taylor. Again, Anthony Richardson back at the helm as starting quarterback. If you're a Colts fan, you're not super excited about that. So I'm hoping he figures it out one of these days. Then again, things weren't great with Joe Flacco in there either, but I feel like he gives them a better chance to win. But again, they don't pay me enough money to be able to make those type of decisions. So Anthony Richardson's back in there for what looks like to be the rest of the season, which means Jonathan Taylor is going to continue to be leaned on early, be leaned on often, and he's been the one. We talk about consistency all the time here. He has been the consistent part of that Colts offense. Went for $114 last week. He's been over 104 times, getting around 20 to 22 carries a game, catching a few passes out of the backfield, getting targeted 4 or 5 times a game, depending who's in there. Again, if Richardson's in there, that's going to be all kinds of checkdowns. The tight end position is not great for Indy, so that means Jonathan Taylor's going to see some of that. But just the guy's going to get the volume. He's got a couple of nice matchups coming up. The Jets coming up this week are kind of middle of the road. Actually, they're in the bottom third against a running back. They got the Patriots in a couple of weeks. So, again, the offensive line is good. I think it's a little deceptive, too, when he's against teams that are ranked a little bit higher as far as against the run because they can really run the ball very, very well. And they're going to have to run the ball very well if they have any shot at winning football games.
Yeah, that's for sure. Just want to give another shout out. I know I've done it before, but this is not the guy I want to talk about. Just want to give another shout out for Chuba Hubbard. Can we give this guy some applause? This guy signs a big contract 2 weeks ago. Even though every week everybody is dying for Jonathan Brooks to play. What's the guy go do? Goes out and rushes for 158 yards in the last week's game. I'm like, God bless this guy. You know, he could have went out there and half-assed it and, you know, hey, everybody cares about Jonathan Brooks, you know, yeah, I got paid now, screw you all, you know. But no, he went out there and busted ass. Gotta love that guy. I'm glad I have him in a couple of my dynasty leagues. As much as I know Jonathan Brooks may or may not be the future, they signed this kid to be the part of the future. And that gives me some hope that, you know, maybe that wasn't a bad decision to keep him in a couple of my dynasty leagues. But the guy I want to talk about is another guy this guy may be the Rodney Dangerfield at the running back position, maybe of all of fantasy. And that is James Conner. Every year we have zero love for this guy. And every year he quietly just puts up good, decent fantasy numbers, high consistency volume. Right now, I guarantee you, if you went to anybody other than somebody who might own James Conner and say, where do you think James Conner ranks in total points and consistency? You might have to explain the consistency thing, but just in total points, he's 11th. I mean, I'm like, huh? What? Consistency-wise, he's at 80%. He's ahead of Saquon Barkley, who's at 78%. Not in total points. Barkley's got him in total points. But James Conner, just week after week, gets the job done. Last week, he only had 12 carries for 33 yards, but he had 5 catches for 80. He got the touchdown rushing because he actually caught the pass and fell into the end zone, but they didn't give it to him, so they put him at the 1, so he ran it in. So he still got a touchdown, which is cool. But he just gets the job done. He's had 4 games over 100 yards rushing this year. Outside of Barkley and me, I don't even know who else. Like most people, like Kamara is all about, you know, catches and, you know, that's where his fantasy points. And I don't know if anybody has more 100-yard rushing games outside of Barkley. I don't know if anybody has more than Connor's 4. I wouldn't know who it is.
Well, I can tell you Taylor's tied with him with 4 just because I just looked at it. So he's at least tied.
Okay, so Jonathan Taylor. All right. Very, very, very good. But yeah, just amazing. I mean, again, you're not going to go pick him up somewhere. He's not going to be on the waiver wire. I just want to give this guy some respect for what he's done. I wish I had him in any league, and I don't, because he's 29 years old. He's done, right? No, everybody's like, Trey Benson's going to take over, and he's the future, blah, blah, blah. No. James Conner said, yeah, not today, buddy. So, yeah, anyway, love him. All right, let's move to the wide receiver position. There's only 200 percenters. Both of them are hurt. Godwin won't play the rest of the year, so he's going to be 100%. So that's just the way it's going to be. Nico Collins should be back this week, 5 for 5. Hopefully he'll come back, start earning some clutch games. I got him in a couple of leagues. But then really the guys that are playing every week that are at the top, Jamar Chase, 90%. Justin Jefferson, 89. Malik Neighbors, 88. A.J. Brown, 83. Drake London, 80. Terry McLaurin, 80. Cooper Kupp, 80. Of course, he's only been played 5 games. T. Higgins, 80. Only played 5 games. So, Ron, a lot of the top names. McLaurin is a surprise. You know, in the past, he really hasn't been that consistent with his past quarterbacks. But, boy, him and Jaden Daniels are clicking. So tell us about your thoughts on some of these receivers, and then who do you got for your pick of the week?
Yeah, we always talk about our guy Terry Targets here. We love Terry Targets on the show, and we love to see him finally get some consistent quarterback play because the dude is damn good. I mean, you saw him play at Ohio State, and with him being in Washington, they just have not had that consistency. And Jaden Daniels, again, if you haven't seen Jaden Daniels play, make it a point to try to watch that dude. He is fun to watch. Appears to be the real deal. So it's cool to see that finally coming around. But the guys like Juwan Jennings here, just kind of out of necessity. Jamison Williams, with that Detroit offense there. Amon Ra. We talked about Khalil Shakir off air. That guy's been nothing but consistent this season, just kind of out of necessity too. And even since Amari Cooper's come to town, he's missed a game or two. It's still been Khalil Shakir when he's been in the lineup. So um, another guy I want to highlight there too. I mentioned Ricky Pearsall earlier. If you got Ricky Pearsall available in your leagues, go get him. I have Juwan Jennings, and I just saw he was downgraded to questionable. He's been missing a little bit of time, so if you can go grab him, go for it. But the guy that I'm going to focus on here, guy in Tennessee, we know Tennessee traded our guy DeAndre Hopkins to Kansas City. He went on to bigger and better things, but Calvin Ridley's kind of been left behind, and Calvin Ridley's kind of been silently one of the more consistent guys over the last few weeks. I have him on that team that I mentioned earlier with Hurts and Burrow as my quarterbacks, and I needed a receiver going into the league. He was into the season. He was available, so I grabbed him. And again, he's kind of the last man standing. You got Tyler Boyd there. Tyler Boyd hasn't really done much. You had Chiggy at tight end, not really done much there either. So it's just, again, kind of out of necessity. Calvin Ridley's been the guy. Last 3 weeks, targets have been 15, 8, and 9, and then 8 and 9 the 2 weeks before that. So he's, again, been getting the looks early and often, and that's translated into fantasy production pretty much every game. You got the 342 clunker there against Buffalo, but that whole offense didn't play well against them. But you got a 10 for 43 in there. You got an 8 for 73, and you got a 5 for 84 last week with 2 scores against pretty tough Chargers defense. So looks like Calvin Ridley's trying to turn it on a little bit. Got a couple of good matchups coming up with Minnesota, and then follow that up against, I lost it here. Who are they going against? It's against the Texans. So Texans allow a little bit of points to fantasy wide receivers as well. Both of those teams are in the bottom third. So Calvin Ridley's a guy that if you got him, probably didn't spend a lot on him, but starting to pay off some dividends for you. When it kind of looked like they're in the middle of the season, you might have got stuck with a dud.
Yeah, no, it's after his little stint in Atlanta, we thought that was going to be it, and he was going to come back, and then he gets traded. But yeah, he's looked good the last few weeks for sure, and certainly again without D-Hop there, that's all he got left, so it's not much. So yeah, he'll be heavily targeted. A guy that you mentioned just a little bit ago about and is up there consistency wise is Khalil Shakir. As you mentioned, he's been there all season. He's been there working, obviously, with Josh Allen. They brought Amari Cooper in, and in week 7, Amari Cooper first game, 4 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. That hurt Khalil Shakir? Nope. He had 7 catches for 65 yards, and since then, he has earned 4 straight clutch games: 9 for 107, 6 for 50, 6 for 58. Again, that's 11, 12 points. That's all you need. So he's earned his clutch games, doing it quietly. He's 19th in total points. I don't know if you're going to be able to swindle somebody out of a trade, but if they have maybe, again, Shakir probably wasn't a high draft pick, could be a wide receiver 4 on most teams, or maybe even a 5. If you can get, if you can maybe work a trade and get him as a throw-in, that could help your depth, especially if you have a lot, multiple flexes, 2 or 3, definitely could be worth looking into. He's quietly been earning some clutch games, regardless of whether Cooper was there or not. So definitely take a look at him out there as well. So we head to our always favorite time, the consistency for the tight ends. We currently have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tight ends over 50%. One of them is Kelsey at 56. One of them is Brenton Strange, who is not playing right. Well, he's playing probably, but he was basically in there for Evan Ingram. Kyle Pitts at 60%, Cade Otton at 60%, Evan Ingram at 67% because he's earned 4 clutch games out of his last 5. Trey McBride 78, Brock Bowers 78, George Kittle 88. George Kittle is in first place in total points by 13, and he's only at 141 points. Just to give you some perspective, let's take a look at the wide receiver position, and 141 points would put you, well, it's not terrible, in 9th place. So not terrible. I thought it'd be worse than that. I really did. I thought it was like 25th. But it's still not terrible. But, it drops off drastically. If you go down to 12th place, that's Dalton Kincaid at 81.6 points. So, again, not great. Ron, we know how much we love tight ends. Are there any out there that you feel like, maybe it's not a terrible idea if we grab this guy or that guy? What's your thoughts on the tight end position without throwing?
I mean, I was going to say that you mentioned that I actually had to get some water because you mentioned that word tight end, and a little bit of my dinner tried to come up there. So yeah, I mean, unless you can go out and try to get George Kittle from a team, maybe that their hopes are kind of fading. The one thing you always got to have about George Kittle in the back of your mind, again, I have him in a couple of leagues, and it's really paid off for me, is when's he going to go down? Not if, but when. He did miss one game. He's questionable every week. But again, he's questionable heading into this week. I read about him. Kyle Shanahan says no really issue. He's good to go. They just, he had the little hamstring thing last week, so they think he's fine. That might be kind of the persuasive piece you use. I don't know. But other than that, it's just these guys are so dependent on touchdowns. If they're not scoring touchdowns, they're probably not getting you that clutch game unless they're those top guys like Bowers or like McBride or like Kittle that those offenses rely upon. The guy I'm going with this week, though, finally got a clutch game last week. Again, because of a touchdown, because the other parts of the stat line were 3 grabs for 17 yards. But I like this guy a lot. I love the way he plays the game, and that's Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth is just that prototypical Steelers guy that can just block and catch a pass here and there and just do the key stuff. I love watching that dude play. I don't know why, but that's who I went with. Again, you're just kind of mixing and matching with the right matchups. And, he's got a couple of decent matchups coming up, too. He's got Baltimore coming up this week. And then after that, let's see, week 12. I just looked it up and I lost it again. Who do they go with? The Browns. Tough matchup there. But, again, you got to throw somebody out there, and you're playing the matchups. He's probably on your waiver wire. He might be on somebody's bench, but again, if you need somebody and you want to try to play those matchups, he's a guy to go with. But again, anytime I get to talk about Muth, I like to talk about Muth.
Yeah, we all love Muth. If you got points for blocks and just being a badass, it'd be fine. And speaking of badass, if you don't think that George Kittle plays through injuries, watch the Receiver Show if you have not yet on Netflix. If you see what he did, I don't know if it was the championship, NFC championship or the Super Bowl, where he literally couldn't raise his shoulder up. He went in, they did some stuff, did some shots, and he went back out and played the rest of the game. That's a badass. I mean, he was playing every week with something wrong. And I get it, a lot of players do, but and he's a cool dude. Love him to death. But I want to talk about the Vikings tight end situation. TJ Hawkinson is back. His 2 games back. First game, 3 for 27. Slowly got into the mix. They didn't have a good game against Jacksonville as a whole. They only won 12-7, which was terrible, and we were all very disappointed because we all were betting our houses on Minnesota just blasting them out. But the tight ends, TJ Hawkinson, 8 for 72. But this guy named Josh Oliver, for those of you who are desperate for any breathing tight end, has put up 3 straight clutch games. Now, 2 of them, of course, was, 3 weeks ago in week 8, 2 catches, 30 yards, caught a touchdown, as Ron said. Last week, in week 9, 5 for 58, and caught a touchdown. So there's his 2 clutch games. But this past week, did not catch a touchdown, but 4 for 52. So obviously, Sam Darnold is kind of digging these 2 together. I don't know how much they're out on the field together. Probably not much, but you never know. But yeah, total combined 12 catches for 124 yards for those 2 tight ends. Now, again, how desperate do you got to be to get Josh Oliver? Well, depends on how bad you're going to be hurt. But again, these 2 massive bye weeks are coming up. May not be a terrible idea. Let me make sure Minnesota isn't one of them. They're not. So, in those 2 big bye weeks, they're playing against New England. No, that's not at Chicago, and home against Atlanta. So, again, might be worth picking up Oliver. I'm sure Hawkinson is long gone on somebody's team, but keep an eye on this. If he keeps getting these 4 for 50 or even 4 for 40, that's 8 points. If you're in a deep league or a deep, lots of flexes, or you're just desperate for a breathing tight end because everybody's on a bye, Josh Oliver may not be a terrible idea. Like you said, he's really been catching the eyes of obviously Sam Darnold without and with TJ Hawkinson. So, Ron, like you said, at this point, you just hope you have some decent tight ends. I got lucky in Kings Classic. I picked up Jonnu Smith. Once he started kind of getting hot, he's been filling the void. I mean, he's put up, let me see. I lost him. Where'd he go? He's 3 out of his last 5. Didn't earn one this past week, but he's getting 8 points. If he's missing, he's not missing by much. He's still being fairly involved. And who knows, if Tyreek goes down again, those were the weeks when he really broke out and had some bigger weeks. This wrist injury for Tyreek, we don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, again, Jonnu Smith, if he's out there, grab him, get him on your team. So, Ron, I assume you have your card of the week, so show everybody that. Always excited to see those.
Went with a guy that if you remember watching this guy play and having him in fantasy, life was good when you got to watch him. And that's Mr. Randy Moss. Got a nice little 2004 Upper Deck, a piece of game-used Randy Moss jersey in it. But if you were lucky enough to watch those offenses those couple of years with Dante Culpepper, Chris Carter, Randy Moss, my goodness, was that fun to watch. Even Randall Cunningham in the mix there, getting a little bit of run with those teams. But again, Randy Moss in New England as well, but just one of the greats. Dude was unlike anybody I ever remember watching growing up. So shout out to Randy Moss. If you came a little bit after Randy Moss came into the league, go back and look up those highlights, man, because you're missing out on one of the greats. Went with Jerry Rice last week. Randy Moss is right there on that Mount Rushmore wide receivers for sure. So,
except the year they played for the Raiders.
Yeah, there was that one year where everybody thought he was done, and the Patriots got him for like 5 cents on the dollar, and that turned out pretty well because he played with that Tom Brady guy that we mentioned earlier. So, get to BigGuyFantasySports.com. Get to the X Machine. Check us out there at Ron Rigney on the Twitter, on the X, whatever it is. All the articles, all the podcasts. I had to sit out. You gentlemen covered me for the consistently cashing last week. I appreciate that. I'll be back in with Mr. Colby R. Conway this week. You guys will have the prop bets, so go check out all that stuff and get those trades done. And we're helping you find that consistency at BigGuyFantasySports.com.
Yeah, don't forget to reach out to us. So, like Ron said, on Twitter, emails, through the website, any of that stuff. Hit us up. If you got a trade you want us to bounce off, I got people that text me. Well, they send DMs through Twitter. Follow me, tell me to follow you if I haven't, and DM me, DM Ron. I mean, that's what we're here for. I'm helping people out all the time. Just, hey, Bob, I got this trade. I'm thinking about doing this, picking this guy up. What do you think? That's what we're here for, folks. We're not going to charge you for it. It doesn't matter if you're a subscriber. We're just here. And we're going to help you with this consistency model so that you, one, get to the playoffs this year and hopefully win a title. But more importantly, keep carrying that forward to next year, especially in Dynasty. We can help you with that. So check all that out. Like Ron said, all the great stuff. James Knight's got his under the waiver wire, Ron's waiver wires ones from early in the week, Kobe's who's hot, who's not. A lot of great stuff out there. All the podcasts and, like you said, all the prop betting and everything this weekend. So thanks again for listening. For Ron Rigney, I'm Bob Lung. Take care. God bless. We'll see you soon.